Bobby Joe Raper served the City of Irving first on City Council and then as mayor for 18 years. Today he serves the congregation at Pioneer Drive Baptist Church. We hear more of his story in this edition of Profiles. Mayor Raper, it's such a pleasure to be able to sit here and chat with you about so many things that you've been involved in the life of this community. But I want to go back to before the community. I want to go all the way back to McKinney, Texas, where a little boy named Bobby Joe Raper was born.
Right.
Talk to me about growing up in small town McKinney.
Well, I loved it a lot. It was a lot of fun growing up. McKinney then, I think, had less than 15,000 people. I don't remember all of it. But growing up in that environment, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of pain. There was pain because the city was so class conscious. McKinney at that time had the haves and the have-nots. And the two groups didn't, they didn't get with each other too much. But my daddy, owning a welding and repair shop, he was kind of the middle. And so I had the privilege of associating with the haves and the have-nots and everything. And growing up with kids, McKinney then had a great cotton mill. Texas Textile Mills, the cotton mill. Well, everybody that lived down in the mill block, the mill actually furnished housing and everything.
Oh.
Because they paid them only starvation wages, to tell you the truth. And they had a company store where they could buy their groceries and their necessities on credit. And anyway, I knew kids that grew up in the mill block. We called them lint heads because, there was so much lint all around the mill. Well, that was terrible, but we called them lint heads.
And they'd have it all in their hair, I'm sure.
And when, particularly the men and women that came out at the end of the shift. Mm-hmm. And so it was neat growing up there and everything. And,
I know that McKinney was probably sort of a little bit of a hub because when we talked about this before, you talked about the fact that kids from other communities actually had to come to was it just high school?
High school, yeah.
Yeah.
So many of the smaller schools around McKinney, their school system went through the 9th grade. And so when they finished the 9th, they would come to McKinney. And that was fun too, because we had what we called a bus kids. They had all of the kids coming from the country, they rode the bus in. They referred to as the bus kids. And one of the things, some of those kids were coming from Prosper, Texas. One of the biggest troubles in McKinney High School then was foreign letter jackets. These kids may have lettered at Prosper before they came to McKinney, and were we going to allow them to wear their P letter for when this is McKinney, had the big M and everything. So that was interesting, getting meet those kids and everything. So it was a good school system, though. When I think about that school system, I think about, well, I have to tell you this about a teacher that touched myself, my being, and that was the teacher named Ruth Dow. This lady was so tremendous. She led me through two things. Number one, I was a stutterer. I still stammer. I can't get out of it, but all at once, one day, I woke up stuttering, and I don't know why. It
just
came
out
in
of a shock.
Just like that. Then we had the telephone system. You didn't dial or anything. You picked up the telephone, and the operator said, "Number, please," and I could not speak or anything. The number at my dad's shop in McKinney was number 4. So if I wanted to talk to Daddy's shop, I'd say number 4. But you could, when you're a stutterer, you can't do that. And I fought this and I battled it. The kids are not, they're not real kind at that age and everything.
Well,
So
and you're always looking for those little things at that age that makes people stand
right.
apart.
that,
Yeah.
they and to graduate from the 12th grade out of McKinney High School, you had to pass English literature taught by Ruth Dow. One of the things you had to do is memorize and say Chaucer in Old English.
Oh, that's just way too much.
For a stutterer, one that apparently with the sure drota, no, when you can't even say anything. Well, she called me in one day. Miss Dow called all of the students by their last name. And she said, Mr. Raper, will you stay after school? And I said, oh, goodness. She sat me down. She said, now, I've had all of your brothers and sisters, and I know you. And she says, obvious, I know you stutter. And I thought she was going to say, I wasn't going to have to say Chaucer in Old English. She said, you're still, in essence, she said, you're still going to have to do it. You're going to have to say it. And I started saying, trying to say it. Miss Dowell, I can never do that. And she said, yes, you can. And she said, now, I want to explain to you why you're stuttering. And I thought, boy, this would be great. She said, you're stuttering because your mind is going faster than your mouth. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I tell you one thing, it made me feel good.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to say Chaucer, and here's how we're going to do it. It was no problem memorizing it because I was a pretty good student, and I could memorize it very easily. It was only the first 24 lines of Chaucer, and I could memorize that very easily. And she said, here's what we're going to do. She said, you're going to be the first one to say it. And I know what they're going to do. They're going to laugh and tee-hee and giggle, and the students and everything. Yeah. And she said, no, you're going to go to the back of the class, and you're going to look at me at the front. And said, you keep your eyes focused on Miss Dowell, and you do it. And that day, I'll never forget it. Never forget it.
Just sitting here and thinking about it, I'm terrified for you. So what happens?
The class starts. Miss Dowell says, class, Mr. Raper is going to be first today. And they,
oh, yeah.
Tee and giggled and everything.
Before you even got started.
All right. She didn't call him down. She said, Mr. Raper. I went to the back of the class. You talk about focused on her. I am focused on her at this time. She says, you may commence.
Oh.
And I started. And when I didn't stutter for that first word, I just went, I said all 24 lines of it and everything.
Wow.
And, I felt 10 foot tall. I sat down, and then Miss Dowell looked around that class, and she said, I forget her exact words, but she said, I don't want to hear an excuse out of any of you why you can't do this now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt 10 foot tall. But that lady, I have to take the time to tell you this. Not just that, but other things. She knew that I wanted to go to college. My dad had had a real bad stroke. Lost the business, everything. And it was just really, things were really hard. And she called me in again. And she said, I know you want to go to college, and I'm going to help you. She did everything she could to get me a scholarship. She even signed me up for NRT, Naval Recruit Training anyway.
Okay.
She signed me up for that, and I went down to SMU and took the test. I didn't even come close on that. Anyway, it was obvious that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. She said, I want you to make Miss Dowell a promise, always in the third person. And I thought, I don't know whether I can do this or not knowing what the promise is. And she said, no, I want you to make Miss Dowell a promise. And because of my high regard for her, I said, okay. She said, I want you to promise that you will read one book a month the rest of your life. Books you like, books you don't like. Books that you agree with, books that you don't agree with. I want you to make me that promise. Reluctantly, I did. She said, this will serve you as well as a college education. Now, have I done that? No. I don't read 12 books a year, but I read a lot. I read a lot, and it's because of that. So up there at McKinney, and the things that she taught me as well as others, but I'll never forget her. I'll never forget her.
It's easy to see why you wouldn't, because this is someone who had a huge impact on really shaping who you are as a person. For her to give you her faith in you so you could stand there and recite Chaucer. Mayor, I'm an actress. I don't recite Chaucer. So, it's really quite an undertaking for somebody who's a stutterer. And apparently she made a similar impact for a lot of young men and women, because haven't they?
Yeah, they've named a school, an elementary school, the Ruth Dow, I think it's elementary school, in McKinney. Of course, they've grown a whole lot. Now, I hadn't been up to McKinney in a long, long time, but I know that they did name the school for her, and that's great. We had a 50th or something reunion a while back, and they asked us to think about big things we could remember in our high school years, and so many of us brought up about Miss Dow.
Sure.
But I was first, and then everybody else said, well, yeah, I remember her. So many things about how she dressed. She was such a classy dresser. I mean, every day, boy, she was dressed classy. She'd never married, as far as I know, and she dated a doctor, Dr. Shunway in McKinney, and we would see them around at different things and everything. And of course, when you're 18 years old, anybody that's 30, you think they're an old person, But anyway, yeah, McKinney. I think of so many things there, and
it was a good place for you to grow up, though. It sounds as if.
I have to tell you something about my mother, and if I can do it. My mother, of course, was the sweetest, most precious woman that ever lived. She demonstrated love, and I knew all of my life that my mother loved me, but my mother taught me something else too. I was raised in a totally segregated society. Blacks and whites did not go to school together. We didn't have anything to do with each other. We were actually taught that, well, you've got to stay separate from each other. Mm-hmm. And I've had people challenge me and say, well, I was never taught that. I was taught. Therefore, I didn't have any black friends. I didn't know anybody that wasn't the same color that I was. Now, I did have some Mexican friends, but anyway, when I was raised in McKinney, if a white woman was walking down the street and a black man met her, he was expected to step aside. Now, hey, I saw it. But I saw this one time too. My mother was born and raised in Sargent, Nebraska. And my mother and I had come out of Woolsworth. Every store's got a Woolworth and a Duke and Ayers. But anyway, we came out, and she had me by her right hand, and I'm doing. A black man approaches her, and he's got a hat on. And he takes his hat off, and he steps to the side. And my mother had a fit. She said, no. And she went and got him. Now, unheard of, here the white lady, actually grabbing a black, and she grabbed him. She said, no. And you get no.
It pulled him up the road.
Yeah. She, all the back end of the street. And as I think about it now, it's bound to be terrifying him and everything,
Sure. Yeah.
because he's going to be blamed or something like that and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Now, that taught me something. Did it cure every bit of my race prejudice? No, it didn't. It would be years and years until I found out that people are just alike. The only thing is our skins are a different color. And as long as we will allow this wall to be between us, and we're afraid to look on the other side of the wall, then we'll have these same prejudices with each other. But anyway, that's something else I learned in McKinney too.
And I believe you told me that you were 8 years old when that situation happened, and for you to have remembered that all your life really says something about the impact of that particular action from your mother on the rest of your life.
That's right. I'll never forget it. Now my dad was quite the different though. I mean, he was just exactly the other way as she was. This way, but that's.
I think it says a lot that you recognize that and that you made a different decision. And ultimately, once you were here in Irving and became mayor, it was very important for you to make a decision about how you were going to handle yourself. But I don't want to get ahead of the story. I want to ask you a little bit, I want to ask you a little bit about what came next after high school, because you were a good student in school, made good grades, you really wanted to go to college, and that just wasn't in the cards.
No.
So what'd you do next?
I went to the Navy, joined the Navy.
How'd you end up in the Navy? Because you started out wanting to go to the Marines.
Yeah, I did. I went down to join the Marines. I had a buddy, and I saw those Marine uniforms, those dress uniforms. I thought those were the prettiest thing in the world.
Pretty sharp.
Now, I was going to get drafted, so it didn't make any difference. Then the Korean War, you had a draft, so I was going to get drafted. I couldn't go to the college or anything. So me and a buddy, we said, let's go join the Marines. He said, okay. We rode the bus, went down to Dallas. All of the recruiting offices were, I believe, in the old Santa Fe building in downtown Dallas. We went to join the Marines. We were at his door at the Marine recruiter before he opened.
You were eager.
We were eager. He opened, came in, sat down, come a young man, and took a bunch of information and everything. And he paused. And there was some strength, of course, he'd light a cigarette, smoking. He said, why don't you go down the hall? The Navy recruiters are just a few doors down. I mean, it insulted me. Well, I want to join them. Suggested that I go. Well, I got up, and me and the other, I said, come on, get out. This guy doesn't want the Navy. I went down to the Navy, talked to them, oh yeah, signed up, joined right then. And then I had to go back to tell this Marine recruiter, because I was going to tell him off. And I went down there and he saw us. He was talking to another guy, and anyway, he got through with the other guy, and I told him something to the essence, well, I just want you to know now that the Navy was glad to take me. And he said, sit down. Still smoking that cigarette. He said, young man, he said, I'd love to have you in the Marine Corps. I'd love to have you in the Marine Corps. But he said, if I took you in the Marine Corps, the only place you'd go is straight to Korea. He said, I'd put you in the infantry and you'd go to Korea. And he said, I thought I'd just better have you look at something else. Now later, when I thought about that guy's conscience, he didn't want us to be in the infantry in Korea, so he invited us to join the Navy, and so that's what we did. And then went to San Diego, and I stayed in the Navy 4 years, and it was fun.
You learned a lot, learned to trade in the Navy as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, they taught me. I actually was trained as a radarman, and practiced that all of the time I was in the Navy. And then after the Korean War was over, they trained me as a weatherman also to do cloud formations. When a ship is by itself, every 4 hours you have to do certain things in the ship log. the weather. You take the barometric pressure, temperature, wind, clouds, and everything. And then at that time, we sent them to Tokyo by teletype to Tokyo. So I knew just enough about weather to be dangerous. And anyway, can I tell you about a guy I met there? We had a guy come to our ship that was a hard hat diver. Now, I was on a DE, a destroyer escort, which is a small ship. How on earth did they assign a guy to our ship that's been trained to be a hard hat diver? You know, one's the bail and the suit and all of this stuff and everything. Well, as it turned out, he had been in so much trouble, he had just got out of the Navy brig in Sasebo, Japan, so they sent him to our ship just to finish his tour, because he was a constant troublemaker. But he was an accomplished hard hat diver. Truk, if you remember that name, Truk Island was where the United States destroyed most of the Japanese fleet. In about 54, they decided to clear all of the ships that had sunk in Truk. And an Australian company had the contract to do that. So his name was Cole, he hit me up and he said, well, I'm going to work as a hard hat diver. Would you work with me as a tender? You know, stay on the surface, but take care of him. The water was 110 feet deep or something, is all that it was there. And so we applied to this Australian company and everything, and he and I were going to be a team and work in Australia. Met all of the Australian requirements, and at that time, you had to come to Australia, you had to have your money round-tripped. I mean, they didn't want any freeloaders or anything.
So you couldn't go to Australia unless you had a ticket back home to wherever you came from.
Right. You had to have a round trip to come back. And by the way, you had to be white. So
okay, yeah.
a lot
you
of people
also couldn't be
say,
anything
that's
else.
not true about Australia. Hey, I was
you were there.
I was in this situation, and I had to fill out this thing, and it says right here, are you white or are you another color? But anyway, I got out of the Navy first. I was going to come home to McKinney and then join him in San Francisco, and we had actually made reservations on a tramp steamer to go to Australia, and they were going to supply him all of the equipment and everything. And well, I should have never gone back to McKinney, so I went to home 2 weeks in McKinney and met boys and girls, friends, and all that thing and everything, and I never did join him. So I wandered along, you know, wonder what happened if I'd gone to Australia with him. Would I be a millionaire? Would I be a bum or alive or dead or something?
Or what might have happened? But you know, before we move on from that experience, because I do want to start talking about how you ended up in Irving and met Mrs. Raper. But I want to ask you about one other story that you shared with me, and it really sort of talks a little bit about how important it was to have somebody who could, you know, talk about the weather. Situation in Korea, and I want to think it was Christmas Eve. Yes. When you were on a ship, and you were seeing some action on this particular evening.
We had, you know, the Navy then said, when the war was still in Korea, they said they'd tell the parents, send your Christmas gifts by the end of October. Well, we got them about the middle of November. I mean, somewhere in there, about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And my aunt at that time had sent me I knew it was a box of chocolate chip cookies. I opened everything else, but I kept those. My Christmas Eve, my ship had been at General Quarters several hours. We relieved from General Quarters about 9 o'clock at night. Well, my buddies knew that I had that box of chocolate chip cookies.
And I'm guessing they probably want some of them too.
They want some of them, you better believe it. And so we had some coffee, and I opened them up, and there is my aunt's box of chocolate chip cookies. Of course, they're nearly all powdered. They've run, you know, broken and everything else. We're going to feast now. And the ship goes to General Quarters again. In the ship, it was a bong, 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 bong. The lights all come on and everything else. Well, I'm at General Quarters. I'm the captain's bridge talker. That means I have to. Now, I was rated, and I shouldn't have been a bridge talker. But the captain What he wants, he gets, period. And I'd been doing it for a long time, about 2 years with him. And so I had to get dressed. I still had my insulated underwire on, so I put them on and got dressed, go to the open bridge. We're approaching Christmas Eve now. Now, what we were doing, the Marines on the beach were asking us to fire star shells. A star shell is a shell that explodes in the air, and it's burning magnesium, and it just lights about 100 yards, and as it floats down in a parachute, it lights it up. In Korea, they had this strange fog that was just about 6 feet high. A good tall person could see over the top of it, but from the back 6 feet to the ground, it was just thick as soup. The enemy were crawling through the fog, crawling into the trenches and the foxholes with the Marines, and it was terrifying. So we would fire the star shells, and it would light it up so that they could see better what was coming in. I can only imagine these guys. You know, you talk about the real heroes of any war. It's those guys.
And if you think about who they are in terms of their age, they're 19, they're 20.
All 18 and 19.
They're babies.
They're the ones that get killed.
Yeah.
That's what's sad about every war. It's not the old men. It's the youngsters that got their whole life in front of them. But anyway, this Christmas Eve, the captain who I had such respect for, great A.W. Veen was his name at that time, great captain. He's looking through his night binoculars, and we can see the star shells as they're coming down, and we're talking to the Marines by radio. He looked at his watch, and to no one and to everyone on the bridge, he said, about 2,000 years ago, a man was born to save us all, and we celebrate his birthday by killing each other. And he never elaborated.
He didn't need to.
He just, that went on about our business. Now, I was not saved at that time. I was not a Christian. But that has stuck with me. Every Christmas now, I share that with my family. Every Christmas Eve, all of my children, my grandchildren, we all sit at the foot of the Christmas tree, and they want me to read the Christmas story, which I have done every year since Vinny and I have been married. We've never missed. Anyway, I tell them that. I've said, I know y'all have heard this 40 or 50 times now, but I want to tell you the story of A.W. Veen. And actually the first person, really, that put it in just that proper context for me.
And it stayed with you.
And it stuck with me.
Yeah. It's quite a story, and especially when you put it in such stark contrast to what the world celebrates.
That's right.
When we're not at war. Although it seems these days we're constantly at war.
We've, and I think it's going to stay that way, to tell you the truth. I think that, I don't want to get preachy. Well, maybe I do want to get preachy. I don't know. But biblically, in my opinion, we're in the end times. The 3 hurricanes, did God bring them? No, He did not. And if you think, if anybody thinks that God brought those hurricanes, they're foolish. But those 3 hurricanes came, and people better wake up. I think God is saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And we better.
You have spent the last several years of your life doing the very thing you did with me just now, and that's making some things clear. But in the interim, you came back, as you said, to McKinney and met a girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And where did you meet that girl? Did you meet her in McKinney, or?
Yeah, I had now she's not from McKinney. She lived in Irving, when Irving was just a wide spot in the road. She had come from Arkansas. Uh-huh. And hadn't been in Arkansas. I hadn't been from Arkansas very long. I had a good friend girl named Mary Bryant that lived in Prosper, Texas. We never dated. We were friends. We used to go see a movie together, but I knew her. And my wife, Vinnie Ann, she worked with Mary at Southland Life Insurance.
Oh.
And so she said, Mary said, I want you to meet Vinnie. And so that's how we met. Actually on a blind date the first time. And,
Wow.
And that's how it came.
And Vinny's actually the reason that you came to Irving.
That's true. Yeah. After when we decided to get married, I got to tell you this. I mean, I loved her and I knew everything. Finally, I asked her to marry me. I was driving from McKinney to Irving, and she very frankly, she looked at me that night and she said, "I love you, but I won't marry you." And
What a shock.
And she went on to say, "You're not a Christian, and I won't marry you because you're not a Christian." And I said, "Okay, what have I got to do?"
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wanted to marry this girl, and so she explained to me, and I visited with the pastor that we had at that time, and I made a profession of faith. Didn't mean anything. I didn't become a Christian. I wasn't saved. But then about a year or two, that actually happened. And how that came about, we'd had our first girl. It must have been 3 years. And my wife believes that the first Sunday in a child's birth, you need to take them to church. Well, Risa, our first girl, we got up on Sunday morning, and she's getting her dressed and everything. And I start coming up all of these excuses. Well, now, she's only a week. You know, she ought not to go in the nursery, all of these diseases and all of this stuff and everything. She just keeps getting her ready. She just keeps getting her ready. Finally, she looks at me and she said, "Risa and I are going to church. If you don't want to, you don't go." I got dressed and went with her. You know, and thank God that. But that just shows you what kind of a woman that my wife is. And so those early years, I think about those, and they're very precious.
When you guys settled in Irving and you began to have your kids, I think by then had you started working for Braniff?
Yes.
Now, talk about Braniff in the early days.
Okay.
I remember Braniff as being the airline that everybody wanted to be on. It
Yes,
had those
it was.
beautiful planes, and it's just like everything glamorous happened on Braniff.
I was working as a dress manufacturer in downtown Dallas. It was called Ike Clark of Dallas. I don't even know if they're still in business or not. And I liked it. And I liked the fashion world. And I would have probably stayed in that because it attracted me, everything about it. I just loved it. I really did. My boss, after a few months, asked me to eat with him at the old Greyhound bus station, and I went over there. And I thought everything was fine. We ate and everything. He said, "Now, Bobby," he said, "I'm going to tell you something." He said, "You find a job and get out of this business, or I'm going to fire you."
Oh, my goodness.
I said, "Well, what am I doing wrong? What? And he said, "You're not doing anything wrong." He said, "I don't want you in this business." He said, 25 years from now, you'll be glad. But he said, "Now I'm telling you the truth. You find a job pretty quickly, or I'm going to let you go. You don't need to be in this business."
So he thought you were too smart to be doing what you were doing?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Okay, yeah." I started reading the paper, the want ads, and here's a big article from Braniff. Needed weatherman. Hey,
There you are.
here we are. I went to Braniff and interviewed, and I realized, you know, you've had these interviews that you know you're going to do pretty good. when you know more than the interviewer does.
Yeah, that's a good indication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I realized that I knew more about weather than the guy interviewing me. And on the spot, after about 15 or 20 minutes, he offered me the job.
Wow.
He said, I'll hire you that job. He said, no, you're going to have to go to school for 6 weeks or something like this and this. At that time, every airline had to take care of their own weather. You know, now it comes out of the National Weather Service and everything. Each airline doesn't do their own weather. It's just supplied by the internet, just bang, 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 just like that. And he said, I'll hire you. And goes, the job is going to be in Brazil.
And that's a big surprise.
Yeah. I said, wait a minute. I'm about to be married, and I'm going to go home and tell my new bride that we're going to go to Brazil? I don't think so. Thank you, sir. And I started to leave, and he said, but we've got other openings. And I went down and the openings, and I said, well, which one is the cleanest? And he said, the sheet metal shop. And I hired in as an apprentice mechanic. I worked 40 hours. Then I went 4 hours on my own at school.
This is not on-the-job paid training.
No. But it's training that they provided, and it's the very best thing I ever did. It taught me a trade. And boy, I'm so glad that I did. And it taught me a trade. And then that's how. And so that's how I went with Braniff and stayed with Braniff actually until the bankruptcies, you know. And it was those were good years. I have no bitterness about Braniff whatsoever. I mean, I just have good memories about Braniff. It was the best airline there was, period. And some people got involved with it that should not have gotten involved with it.
And that can happen frequently, can't it, in a good situation?
But nevertheless, I have to tell you this. The first, after I got hired, the second day, the foreman comes to me and he said, now, you have to go for an interview with Mr. Robinson. Okay. Mr. Robinson is in charge of all the maintenance for Brown. We're all going over there to meet Mr. Robinson. One of the guys comes up and says, this is going to be Blind Bob Robinson.
Blind Bob
Blind
Robinson?
Bob.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, when we got over there, I saw Blind Bob Robinson. His glasses were like that Coke bottoms, about like that. And you know how now the technology of glasses is so much better.
It's better.
but then, and his eyes would look wild and everything.
Oh my goodness.
And he comes out in the front of us. He reached in his pocket and he got out a dollar bill. And he popped that dollar bill. And he said, this is what you're working for. Pop, 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 this dollar bill.
Okay.
He said, that's what you want out of me. Now I'm going to tell you what I want out of you. He said, what I want out of you is about 8 hours and about that much. And I have never forgot that expression. I want 8 hours and about that much. Okay. And that's good. That's good. He wanted a good 8 hours and then more than a good 8 hours. Yeah. Because after all, they were paying me $1.49 an hour.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's an amount a man could get. Well, not rich, I guess. Rich wouldn't be the word. Well, you've got a lot of loyalty to Braniff.
Oh my goodness.
And Braniff was good to you. And this is one of the things, once you decided to run for mayor, that was really remarkable to me. And I just want to say it this way. You don't have to be wealthy to run for public office in the United States. No. Anybody who wants to run for office can do it, but it sure is a whole lot easier if you've got some personal wealth.
That's right.
When did you decide to run for mayor? Well, that even's not as important as why did you decide to run for mayor in Irving?
I had an opinion on everything. Texas Stadium was just being built and completed. And I was opposed to that thing. I mean, I said, good night. I talked about Texas Stadium, how bad it was, and how stupid the elected people were that went along that and everything. And then it was Murchison, wasn't it? Murchison, actually.
Yeah,
I said, Clint Murchison, one of the richest men, all this stuff, and I just talk against it, how it's bad, wrong, everything. Totally out of ignorance, by the way. Let me say that. And finally, somebody said, and I don't remember who it was, they said, you've got an opinion about everything. Why don't you run for the city council? And I said, I think I will. I think I will. And I talked to Vinnie about it, and she said, oh, but anyway, I ran. They had, the incumbent was running, and 6 challengers.
Oh my goodness, for the position that you were running for.
There were
Wow.
7 people, and one of them was an incumbent. And I stumped against Texas Stadium everywhere I'd go. Then South Irving was inundated by the odor of that terrible sewer trap, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And I jumped on that bandwagon. I said, we're going to improve this odor in South Irving, and I'm against it. And everywhere I'd go, I publicized both of those things. And then I made it to the runoff with the incumbent, and then I was elected. And so that's how that came. Later, as the years would come, and I was on the council 12 years, and then I was mayor 8 years. I found out how wrong I was, but about Texas Stadium. Texas Stadium was one of the finest things that ever happened to the City of Irving, and right now I'm aghast that the City Council of City would let Texas Stadium leave.
There are many who share that opinion. That's
Could we
true.
have done something? Yes. Oh, and Dallas Cowboys. No. Hey, wait a minute. The fact of the matter is, the Dallas Cowboys ripple down to the City of Irving between $35 and $40 million a year every year. Now, what are you going to do with Texas Stadium now? Store hay in it? Build apartments in it? Oh, come on. Get real. Anyway,
I can see you still have an opinion.
Well, you know, it's me.
There you are. That's right.
I've got an opinion about everything.
When you joined the city council, one of the people that you met right around that same time was Jackie Townsell.
Oh,
now,
my goodness.
many people will remember that Jackie Townsell was Irving's first black elected official. And here you are, someone coming from a very racially segregated background with a dad who's racist on one side and a mother who's not on the other, and you're confronted with having to work side by side with a black woman. What happened in that relationship with you and Jackie?
With Jackie and I, it was immediate love. Now, I'd met her before the time because she was supporting me when I would run for the council and everything. So before she decided to run, she was supporting me. She was helping me. And then I helped her every time that I could. Jackie Townsell, when the final volume is written about the City of Irving, when the final volume is written about the City of Irving, the front chapter should be Jackie Townsell. There should be a statue. I'm going to use an expression that a lot of people are going to take offense to. I'm not very artsy-fartsy. These little bronze statues of little children and everything like that. I'm going to offend everybody right now.
That's okay, Mayor.
Baloney.
It's not something you like.
Baloney. And those things don't come for $2,500 either. If you really want to build a bronze statue, you ought to build it of Jackie Townsell. Here's a lady that virtually stopped all kind of racial trouble in the City of Irving because we would not annex and put water and sewer to Bear Creek. Now, there was a gentleman, called him that, in Grand Prairie that really wanted to stir everything up and keep going from a racial point. Here's Jackie with her level-headedness, always saying, no, it's not right. but the City of Irving is going to take care of it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I never once saw her explode. I never saw her get mad and scream and yell like I did other people. But it was always that level-headedness. The City of Irving should have supplied water and sewer to Bear Creek years before we took. But why? It was black people living there. A lot of people are not going to like that statement either. But nevertheless, that's a fact, what it is. And because there was Jackie Townsend doing that in her spirit, but yet here is a person that could have said, you have done me wrong, my race, so you've done me wrong so long. Now I'm in power, if you say that. Now I'm going to take care of my people. Jackie Townsend never said that. Jackie said, the people I want to take care of in the City of Irving is all of the people in the City of Irving.
Jackie was a statesman. Jackie was a statesman, absolutely. And I think that, like you're saying, her attitude about trying to, rather than keep a fight going, trying to find some solutions for problems, is a focus that we're still grappling with today.
You know, I can't, so many things. I would go to Jackie when I was mayor, and I'd say, Jackie, this, she'd say, okay, Mayor, okay, I'll think about it, we'll see. And if she could support me, she would. Everything, her spirit and her attitude was right. Jackie never wanted to make anything out for herself. I have worked with city council people. They wanted to make sure that they took care of themselves. Jackie never did that. When she came to office, she had nothing. When she left office, she had nothing. But yet, everything that she had accomplished and attempted to accomplish while she was there, now that speaks volumes. And as I said, when this last volume is written about the City of Irving, she has to be there, as some other people, but her. We were not just compatriots and workers and everything. We liked each other. I thought she had a simple, can I tell you something that she did to me and then I did to her?
Oh, okay. Sounds like a prank coming.
We were at the National Conference of Mayors in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Peachtree Plaza Hotel, the highest hotel in the United States. They have 5 restaurants. One of them is like a Denny's. You can come in and it's not high and anything. Jackie and I and some more people, we were sitting there one night. Jackie had not noticed that 2 of the waiters were twins. They were black twins, probably 25 years old. Looked just exactly alike, same height and everything. We had eaten. One of them was waiting on us. Well, Jackie had run out of coffee or tea or whatever, and she kept trying to get, well, she was getting the other one that wasn't our waiter.
Couldn't get his attention.
She couldn't get his attention. Finally, she said, young man or something like that, said, could I get some? And he looked at her and he said, yes, ma'am, you could if it was my table. And about that time, the other twin walked. Now here's 2 of them standing there right beside. Jackie's looking like that. And one of them says, well, ma'am, you know what it say? You know what people say? They say we all look alike anyway.
I can imagine what Jackie Townsend.
Well, I never let her forget that. We would be in places in Irving and different, and I would tell this and everything. Well, Jackie May had a way, and she kept looking. She and I and some other people, we were in New York City visiting with the Westinghouse people about, they wanted a cable franchise here in Irving.
That's something I'm familiar with.
When the day was over, they said, would you like to eat at the 21 Club in New York City? Well, I'd heard about the 21 Club, never been in it in my life. We went there. Finally, we got seated. It's a big table, probably 6 or 8 of us. At that time, and I wish I could recall the name and I can't, but there was a black sports lady that did the sports. And I mean, she was breathtakingly beautiful. I mean, just like that. Brian Gumble and this lady came in and set a table over from her. And I just made the comment to everybody at the table. I said, look at that woman. I said, isn't she beautiful? And I said, she's more beautiful in person than she is on television. And then we went about our business. Jackie got up a few minutes. I thought she was going to the restroom. She circles around like this and goes over to their table.
Oh, boy.
Brian got, you know Jackie.
Yep,
she never hesitated.
Nope, not Jackie.
She introduced herself and she told this girl, she said, that man is a mayor of Irving over there. And said, he thinks you're so beautiful and everything. And then Jackie comes back, sits down. The lady comes to me, and I see her on my right, and here's this gorgeous thing. And she said, excuse me.
Oh, goodness.
And she said that Jackie had told me this, and I appreciate, Mayor, so much what you said and everything. You know? And I said, my God. I said, well, ma'am, I've just got to tell you. I said, I've seen you on television. And I said, you're absolutely gorgeous. And I said, you are more beautiful in person than you are. And I said, I don't mean to hurt your feelings. And she said, hurt my feelings? She said, tell him. But anyway, so Jackie then.
Oh, Jackie got you.
Now,
yeah, she got you.
You know, and everything. So, yeah. And I don't have a, you know, I used to go to her store in her restaurant and eat at her place there and just to talk to her, just to visit with her and everything. And how it ended for her, I know. For Jackie to die immediately after a Billy Graham crusade, that's good.
You and Jackie had a very, very special relationship, both, as you said, as colleagues and as good friends, and pranks on each other and the whole thing, which I think is wonderful, and what a wonderful way to remember her. But you guys did a lot of great work together on the council as well, and I'd like to focus on some of those projects. The first thing that comes to my mind, and why wouldn't it, is ICTN. Yeah. What do you remember about all of those early days?
Those days are, we knew what we wanted. We thought we knew what we wanted. So somebody came up with the idea for us to go to Rome, Georgia, and see a small television which was operated by the city, actually by a joint, if I understand it, city and the county. Mm-hmm. And we went to Rome and visited Rome there to the grease pit. Now, why it's called the grease pit was because they had bought an old village station. And what was their studio was actually the grease pit, where it used to be the grease pit. They had taken egg cartons and taped them all around the walls and the ceiling and everything.
Oh, my goodness.
For their sound. And we met a lady there, and forgive me that I cannot recall her name, but she was in charge of that system. And it was such an education to see what they were doing with virtually nothing. Their cameras looked like something you'd bought out of a Radio Shack or something, little bit like this and everything. Yeah. But what they were doing there, and then we saw what we could do because we were going to be funded. Now, we'd already made our mind up that the franchise tax was going to go to the system. So we'd already made our mind up for that. Now, what we need to do is just make the best of what we've got and see what's available. But we saw there in Rome what they could do with virtually nothing. Virtually nothing. Why? Because they wanted to. With local interest, stuff that you would never see on network, and you're not going to see that.
Sure, absolutely.
You're not going to see the Irving City Council. You're not going to see other things on network. But what Irving? Now, that's what we wanted it to be. That was our vision, and that we said we're going to insist that it do that. It's got to be staffed. It's got to be funded. It's got to have the equipment, a studio, and everything to do that. So that was our vision. But I say today, what we see today is a whole lot because of what we saw in Rome, Georgia, and some people there in Rome, Georgia that had a vision, that tried something. The lady in charge of that, I'll never will forget, she said, I said, how are you able to do all these things done? And she said, well, sometimes I find out that it's easier to ask forgiveness than get permission.
That's a great saying.
And so it was really something. We left there with a vision. We said, now we see what it can be. And of course, the city has kept that vision. And
I'm very grateful that it did, as you can imagine.
It's been good.
The other thing that comes to my mind is the library, the new central library, because for years the library, in fact, when I started with the city, the library was in what is now Lively Point, the Youth Action Center.
Yeah, we had a vision to do that, to build a good, big library that ministered to all of our people in the city of Irving. And, you know, we brought that in under contract too. Jim Scoggin was the architect on that. And we did that. We had a lot of innovative thinking. And why we were able to do that was because we had a good architect, we had a good city manager, and we had a good mayor and city council. For any city to be successful, you've got to have a strong city manager. I mean, that's driving constantly. And you've got to have a mayor and a city council with this same vision. And the mayor and the city council, they just steer the strong city manager the way they want to. Sometimes you have to say, whoa, won't work. Go here. Luckily, and I have to say that Jack Huffman, where we are today and everything, is credit to him, because he had this vision and he was able to carry it out with the good people that he had him around him. And so but in the library it was a vision, and I was so glad to be a part of that and see that made, just like the city hall.
You left city government and decided to really pull internally for, I'm sure, a variety of reasons, and are now in a completely different place. You are the pastor of Pioneer Drive Baptist Church.
Yes.
What brought you over here?
I'd been a member of this church. I was saved in this church, and I've been here for a long, long time. I had been preaching as a layman for about over 30 years as a layman, and I had a lot of opportunities to do that. Over 2 years ago, our family won a great victory in the courthouse. Our family won in court. I had prayed and prayed for this victory, and we won that victory in court. And that night, as I thank God for that victory, the Lord, plain as day, said to me, I have shown you that I'm trustworthy. Now you spend the rest of your life telling other people that I'm trustworthy. Did he speak audibly? No. He spoke to my heart, and that's the best way sometimes. And I made that public. This church ordained me. A period of time after that, this church had a pastor resign. The pulpit committee asked me to be the interim, and I said, okay, I will. And I served for months and months as the interim. And then finally the pulpit committee came to me and said, we feel that the Lord's leading you to be the pastor. Would you pray about being the pastor of this church? And so I prayed about it, and the Lord gave me a peace with it. And so that's how it came about.
Mayor, you've led a city, now you're leading a congregation, and you've led a family, all of which are very important things for a man to be able to do in a lifetime. So I'd like to close by asking you what you would like your legacy to be here in this town, in this community that you came to love enough to make sacrifices to lead.
I hope that when the final chapter said about Jackie, when the final chapter is written about me, I hope that the first thing they'll say is, this is a person that loved the Lord. This is a person that found his peace with Jesus Christ. This is a person that now we know where he is, and we're rejoicing for where he is. Second to that, I hope that the family, my immediate family, I hope that they will say, he did his best. He loved us. He loved us, and he showed us that he loved us. He did his best in everything. I hope then that it will be a city that somebody sometime will say, yeah, I remember that name. I remember that name. He was a person that just wanted to serve people. He was a person that when he went into office, he had nothing. And when he came out of office, he had nothing. But he had a vision that people should be served by the government. By the government. That it's not the government's responsibility to tell people what to do. You do this, you do this, you do this. It's the government's responsibility when people say, now, this is what we want. Then it's the government's responsibility to do that. And I hope when they write this final chapter, if anybody remembers my name, that's what they will say. He was a person that wanted to serve people without any gain, but just to serve the people of the city of Irving to the very best of his ability.